What's up, guys? Mr. Jones here, and here in this video we're going to be going over absolute value equations. Okay, so hopefully you saw the first few videos that were about solving equations, just sort of a little bit of a review from Algebra 1. But here's the first topic that we actually get into that's new for Algebra 2, okay, and that is absolute value equations. Okay, so to introduce this, I just have a few simple statements here that we're just gonna break down the difference between a normal equation that we would solve for x, and then an absolute value equation, kind of what the differences are. So for this first one here, I have x equals 3. Okay, just the statement x equals 3, and there's nothing to solve there, right? That's just a statement. That's saying x, this unknown value, is 3. So compare that to absolute value of x equals 3. Okay, so remember what absolute value is. Absolute value kind of tells you what the number's distance is from 0. Okay, and distance can't be negative, right? So it's the sort of thing where if I said take the absolute value of -5, this is kind of separate from this. If the absolute value of -5 would be 5, that's saying -5 is 5 spaces from 0. Okay, that's its distance from 0 on like a number line. So, but think about that. Think about what that means for an equation, though. Okay, so if I have x, the absolute value of x equals 3, okay, I could say 3, right? If this x was 3, the absolute value of 3 equals 3. So if x was positive 3, that would be true, okay? But couldn't x also be something else, right? Because there's another number that I could put in here for x that would equal positive 3, right? And if I said the absolute value of -3, the absolute value of -3 also equals 3, okay? So for this bottom statement, what I would say is x equals 3, but x also could equal -3, okay? So there would be two answers for that, okay? So if I have x plus 4 equals 9, right? That's just a very simple equation, and I could, separate it with my equal sign, and all I would need to do to solve for x here is -4 from both sides, right? If I -4 from both sides, 9 minus 4 equals 5. But for the bottom one, if I said the absolute value of x plus 4 equals positive 9, think about that, right? I'm wondering, what are the values that x could be to make this equal 9 after I take the absolute value of it, okay? So here's what you do, okay? Here's what you do. You kind of split it up, like I said. So you could say, okay, that whatever is in the absolute value, x plus 4, that could equal positive 9, okay? But then you need to do a second equation. You need to split it again and say, okay, but this expression, x plus 4, if that's simplified to a -9, and then I took the absolute value of it, it would equal positive 9, okay? So I have to consider, okay, what if this x plus 4 equaled -9? What would x have to be there, okay? So basically that's what you do with these. You take it and you separate it, okay? Take whatever was in the absolute value sign and say, okay, that could equal the positive version of that answer, or that could equal the negative version of that answer. So if I do that for the top one, right, it's going to be the same as the first example here. So I minus 4 from both sides, and I get x equals 9 minus 4, 5, right? Same as that one. But I have to consider this other answer option, this one down here, okay? So if I minus 4 from both sides here, I get x equals -9 minus 4 would equal -13, okay? Not -5, okay? So we see that it's positive 5. X could be positive 5. And think about that. 5 plus 4 equals positive 9, and if I take the absolute value of positive 9, that would equal 9, right? But -13, if I put that in for x, -13 plus 4 equals -9, right? So what I would have left then is absolute value of -9 equals 9. And that's true, right? Absolute value of -9 equals 9. So that's my check that the answer is good. But yeah, so x could be positive 5, x could be -13 for that one, okay? So if I go through number 1, okay, what I want to do is, my first check is, right, I first obviously observe that there's an absolute value in there. And I say, okay, I'm going to have to get 2 separate answers for this, okay? But I also want to check to see, is the absolute value by itself? Is there any other terms on this one that are not part of the absolute value? Because if there were, I would want to cancel those. I would want to move those to the other side, okay? Like for number 2, I'm going to have to do that. Okay, but for number 1, I don't have to do that. So I can kind of skip that step and I can go right into splitting my equation, okay? So I'm actually going to get rid of this. And I split it to be 5 minus x equals positive 1. Pretty much the same exact equation, just dropping the absolute value bars off, okay? But I also want to know, okay, if 5 minus x equaled negative 1, if that simplified to be negative 1 in there, I would take the absolute value of it and I could still get positive 1. So you split it up like that, equals the positive number equals the negative number, okay? And so from here, I solve this. So you minus 5 from both sides, and you'd get negative 1x, right? That's what's left here, negative 1x equals 1 minus 5, negative 4. And then you divide both sides by negative 1, and you get x equals positive 4. Okay, so that's one of the answers. Okay, but then the other answer, same thing. If I minus 5 from both sides, negative 1x equals negative 6, and then I divide by negative 1, I get x equals positive 6. Okay, so I could get x equaling 4. If x equaled 4, I would get 5 minus 4 equals 1, and the absolute value of 1 is 1, so it would work. But if I had 6 in there, 5 minus 6 equals negative 1, but then the absolute value of negative 1 equals positive 1. So that works. Okay, so I have two separate answers there. Okay, now for number 2. Like I said, for this one, before you split it, okay, you can split it when the absolute value is all by itself on that side. For this one, the absolute value is not by itself, right? There's this plus 1 over here. So I'm going to deal with that first before I split it, because that is not part of the absolute value, so that wouldn't be kind of part of what I would split. Like this one, I'm only taking what's in the absolute value, okay, because that's really the only thing that could change. But this is apart from that, so I get rid of it first. So when I do that, I'm left with absolute value 2x plus 5 equals 3 minus 1 is 2. And now that the absolute value is by itself, now I can split it into two separate equations. And I say 2x plus 5 could equal positive 2. And then separately, 2x plus 5 could equal negative 2. And so then you would solve those, right? So minus 5, 2x equals negative 3. You divide by 2, so x equals negative 1.5. Okay, and you get a decimal there. No big deal, that happens. Okay, and then the second one, you minus 5 from both sides. 2x equals negative 7. Okay, and then you divide by 2, so x equals negative 3.5. Couple examples there. I'm going to erase what's over here and do two more examples. So here we go. Okay, I lied to you. I said I was going to do only two more examples. I'm going to do three more. You only see two up here, but I don't have enough room, so I'm going to erase that after I do these. Okay, but one of them is real short, so here we go. Number 3, the absolute value of 3x minus 7 equals negative 13. Okay, now think about this. There is going to be some that are special cases that don't follow this, okay? And now think about this. 3x minus 7, I want the absolute value of that to equal negative 13. But again, think about your rules of absolute value. Absolute values are never negative, right? So the absolute value of positive 13 would equal 13, and the absolute value of negative 13 would also equal 13. So there's no way I could get a negative 13 by taking the absolute value of something. Okay, so there's nothing that x could be that I could put in here to make this simplify to a negative 13. So the rule is if you have a negative number, okay, that is the answer to, that's saying the absolute value of something equals a negative number, that is no solution. No solution. You can't have an absolute value equal a negative, okay? So just be on the lookout for that. Can't have negatives, okay? Now number 4, it says 2 times the absolute value, 3x plus 4, equals 32. So again, I do my check, okay? Again, now that you know that, the first thing you should look for is, okay, do I have an absolute value equaling a negative? Okay, and I don't right now, but you want to make sure that you get the absolute value by itself, okay? Because sometimes it'll be absolute value and the answer over here will be negative, but once you cancel something out on this side, then it makes that positive, okay? So just don't be too quick to say no solution. Make sure you follow your steps and you're sure of that before you put that, okay? But here, right, it's not negative, okay? And I have something that I need to cancel before I um, split the equation up, okay? So I need to divide both sides by 2, okay? Because that is not part of the absolute value. So I cancel it, okay? I cancel it, and then when I do that, I'm left with absolute value 3x plus 4 equals 32 divided by 2 is 16. And now, right, it's not equal to a negative, so it is going to have some solutions, okay? And so then I have the absolute value by itself, so I'm ready to split. I'm ready to split it into 2 equations, okay? So I split it into 3x plus 4 equals positive 16, and 3x plus 4 equals negative 16, okay? And then I solve both of them, okay? So on this one, I minus 4 from both sides, and I get 3x equals 12, and then I divide by the 3 from both sides, and I get x equals 4. My other answer is going to come from this one, okay? So same steps. I minus 4 from both sides, I get 3x equals negative 20, and then I divide by 3, and I get x equals negative, I think that's 6.67. So those are my 2 solutions for this one, okay? Like I said, let me erase this, and then we will do one more example and then be done. Okay, so we have number 5 up here, and you see this one's a little bit more complex, right? It says absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals 4x plus 5. And just so you know I probably should have answered this ahead of time, but you can't add or subtract anything from within an absolute value, okay? So like you can't minus 2 from both sides because that's kind of, when something's in an absolute value, it's kind of stuck in there. So you can't cancel that when something's in there, okay? And you also can't add something to this, okay? Like if I was to minus this 4x, I wouldn't minus it from here, okay? I couldn't do that because that 3x is also within that. So just something to cover. I know a lot of kids try and do that at first. So when it's in the absolute value, it's kind of stuck in there and nothing else can get in or out, okay? But for this one, there's actually nothing to cancel, okay? Because the absolute value is by itself on this one side. And even though this side is a little bit messier, has more terms, it's okay. This is actually ready to split right now, okay? So I do that, I split this, okay, the same way I did before. So without the absolute value, 3x plus 2 equals just the same as there, 4x plus 5. But then separately from that, okay, I have, again, no absolute value, 3x plus 2. But again, it's kind of the negative version of whatever was over here. And this one, there's more than one term here. So what I would think of is like negative 4x plus 5. Okay, it's basically saying the opposite of that. And what I'm going to end up doing with that negative is distributing that, okay, because that's our way of kind of negating or making negative every term that would be over here, okay? So this would end up being 3x plus 2 equals negative 4x minus 5, okay? And then I would solve for x. But I'll finish that one after I do this one, okay? So over here, right, I have variable terms on both sides. So hopefully you guys remember I cancel one of those out, and I'm going to minus the 4x from both sides, okay? I do that, and I'm left with negative 1x plus 2 equals 5. And then I minus 2 from both sides, and I get negative 1x equals 3. Okay, last step to divide by this negative 1. And I have x equals negative 3. So that is one of my answers. X could equal negative 3 to make this true. Okay. Now my other answer comes from this one, right? I did the first step already. But to finish it out, same steps. I plus 4x to cancel out this minus 4x over here. And I get 7x plus 2 equals negative 5. Okay. And then I minus 2 from both sides. I get 7x equals negative 5 minus 2 more gives me negative 7. And then I divide by 7. And I get x equals negative 1. x equals -1.